And welcome back to another episode of the Full Metal Cast. I am recording after we had our first false day of spring in the state of Michigan, where temperatures hit 60-ish degrees and then snowed in the exact same day. We'll probably get a few more of those, but it does look like we're going to get high 50s and maybe even 60s at some point this week. So fingers crossed. Quick update on the housing search. Not going well. So far, I've placed 3 offers on houses, 2 of which were offers over asking, all of which I've been outbid. So I'm playing in shark-infested waters, if you will. I'm playing in a rather high worth area with not a lot of money. So I'm really sort of swinging for the fences, but I'll get there eventually. I've probably looked at close to 30 houses now, but the search continues. I took this weekend off from looking at houses. As last weekend, I looked at close to 11 or 12. So just cooling it, going to hit the ground running in a couple days here and start looking at more again and just start placing offers immediately when I like a house. And again, keep swinging for the fences, because owning something in an age of perma-renting should be a goal and should be something you strive for, I believe. And that's definitely just what I'm going for. So that is what it is. But anyways, on to the more important topics. If you were upset that you haven't received your Doge check yet, if you were upset that you haven't yet seen, credit card rates capped at 10%, if you are upset about the lack of draining of the swamp and justice being sought for the victims of the Epstein sort of trafficking ring, those who assassinated a standing president like JFK, those that assassinated MLK, and also just an overall lack of transparency with the release of all of those files as promised again. If you were also upset and disappointed at the lack of the ending foreign wars, and if you were upset that the same president who said he would end all foreign wars and stand up the board of peace also ended up bombing more countries than any other president in their first year as president, fear not. Fear not, because now we have opened up strikes with Iran once again, despite completely wiping out their nuclear capability, and any other word about it was fake news. That's the White House's official release the first time we bombed their nuclear facility on behalf of Israel. But now we have stepped in once again to bomb Iran and topple a regime in the Middle East. And you can take great pleasure in knowing that it was successful, as we managed to wipe out the Ayatollah in the very first day, it would seem. So there's that. I'm not sure what that really does for you. I'm not sure how that makes your pockets fatter. I'm not sure how that helps you afford more food, afford any sort of housing. I'm not sure how that makes you feel safer at home. I'm not sure how that helps you or is for you in any way, but I can assure you that it has helped everyone in the political class and the state of Israel. So you can take solace in that, I suppose. And a quick reminder for any of you who may or may not be history buffs, the same man who we killed in a drone strike for the sake of Israel was put into power by the U.S. You can go through our history in the Middle East, but essentially the Carter administration had contacts in the region, in the Ayatollah's group, before they ended up taking power through the revolution that took place there. And were able to sort of get in the Iranian army's ear to sort of getting in the way of launching a coup against him. So yes, we were directly involved in putting the Ayatollah in the exact seat that he was in before we bombed said seat. And just another brilliant example of American nation building. Just like everything else we do, we fail to see the long-term consequences. We fail to see how things are going to unfold down the road. We take part in it for the immediate profit. And then when we don't like it, we just kill them anyways. And by the way, can you imagine Maduro sitting in some cell, like watching the news unfold, thinking, okay, you know what? I probably got a little lucky. They only just kidnapped me and I'll probably end up getting shipped back eventually or somewhere else, or I'll end up chilling with Maxwell and living out the rest of my days in a very cushy prison where I can have pets and dogs and, cozy up next to the president's best friends in a cell. But the primary source, or maybe not the primary source, but we are in the top 3, no doubt. And I will stand that we are number 1 currently of instability in the world is the United States of America. From threatening to take Greenland, from fucking around with Canada a little bit, implementing all of these tariffs, and then at the same time having our only export be war. We are the biggest issue in the world right now. So this attack on Iran doesn't make you any more safe. If anything, it continues to make things less safe for Americans overall, as attitudes about our country aren't really going to be shifting in a more positive direction after this, especially with the internet. People can look up that we directly put the Ayatollah in power way back then. What the fuck are we doing? This has nothing to do with America. It's everything to do with whatever's going on in the sandbox. We've simply made it our business because it's good for profits. It's good for kickbacks. It's good for political power. And my God, is it a great distraction from all of the failings and the absolute ignored campaign promises on behalf of the current administration. And again, all of this when it is harder to afford anything and it is harder to find a job. I remember seeing that I think it was the last year's Q4 jobs figures were revised down to such an abysmal number that if you averaged out the number across all 50 states, it comes out to be like 300 job openings per state. That is not a good measure of how things are going here at home. We don't have enough money to support hurricane victims, of wildfire victims. We can't even get clean drinking water or stable energy grids to our communities. But sure as shit, do we have enough to send an entire fleet over to the Middle East to bomb some mud huts, to kill some guy that we made the supreme ruler over there way back in the 1900s. Never fails. And yet you still have people who just kind of shrug their arms and go, that's just how it is. That's just how it is. It has to be that way. We have to suffer like this. And we don't. But until that attitude changes, there's really not a whole lot we can do, unfortunately. And so you get to watch people like Lindsey Graham and his offspring and the next copy and paste version of him take his place once he's done sort of siphoning off the life force of whatever blood boy he's got carrying around. But again, not to just make it all doom and gloom, silver lining is with the internet and the amount of information floating around, there are more people who are against this regardless of political party. I went to brunch over the weekend where this is actually very funny. You know that meme? There's a girl sitting at a table and she's got a golden retriever and she's like holding it by like the mouth. And the caption's always like, my wife, whenever I'm dragged to like an event with her coworkers to stop me from spouting, government propaganda or whatever, anti-government propaganda or whatever. That was me at this brunch, because the 6 people that my fiance and I met for brunch just came from Kamala Harris's book tour that stopped in Detroit. They drove up from Ohio, spent the night in Airbnb in Detroit just to go to Kamala Harris's book tour. And so I came to this brunch ready to be an absolute nightmare. I was going to throw around the fact how she intentionally inflated nonviolent offenders' sentences while she was a DA, just to sort of pad her numbers and show her like win rate and her success rate and how harsh she was against crime, most of which were African-American men with, marijuana charges. So not looking great there. Also, love to throw in the fact that one of the primary things that lost her the entire election was her stance on Israel. Not very free Palestine of her, and among other things. But I was very much looking forward to going to town on this event. Luckily, for everyone's sake, it really wasn't brought up. But we did get talking a little bit about, the joke was made about the Dow, joke was made about the Epstein files, and everyone was like, I don't care like who's in it. We hang them all. Like, we have to hang them all. I don't care if Obama's in it. We hang them all. Everyone knows the Clintons are involved. You hang them all. And I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And then another topic which I'll touch on later that had to do with AI and wars also came up, and they were very hard standing on that as well. Now, does their opinion change whenever their team gets in power? I don't know, but the way it was being discussed, it wasn't a this would be so much better if she had won sort of thing. And so again, I may have been just my confirmation bias taking over, but it seemed like it was a very objective look that like this sucks, and it doesn't really matter if it's red or blue who's doing it. Like this is objectively just bad stuff that's happening. So that gave me a little bit of hope. And with the amount of information that's out there, albeit there's a lot of propaganda and sort of shading on topics that you really have to sort of sift through and look through to get to the objective truth. But it's all there. It's more easier to find than ever, I think. So there's hope still that, you know, an enlightened group will continue to grow. But yeah, really not great that I see us going to war with Iran when we don't even have enough money to fill a fucking pothole. So there's not a day that goes by where I'm just confirmed in that everything I've ever said about the entire state, the people who support it, and the people who work within it. There is some meme going around where it's like, it's kind of hard to like look away from the really uncomfortable truth that like the government as the largest employer in our country, first of all, it's a massive fucking issue, but like it's hard to look away from like with everything becoming more and more like less affordable and harder to get by, and like the option of like military like enlisting for the military being like one of like the only for sure ways to get a paycheck to really get by. That's a really terrifying prospect. So that's something to chew on. I haven't really fully sort of workshopped that thought out yet, but like there's a very real sort of like looming thing where it's like everything has become less safe, less affordable, everyone's less healthy. It's much harder to find a job and support yourself and your family, but you can go sign up and murder for the state and they'll take care of you forever, sort of. Well, until you retire from the military, in which case you're dead to them anyway. So maybe there is more to that than I thought. Once you're a useless killing tool, you can go start a shotgun for all the state cares, which tells you all you really need to know about how worthy it is to go join that cause. But that's a little bit of propaganda or a little conspiracy theory I saw sort of, you know, making the rounds again. And I really wasn't letting that sit too pretty, especially because I know a bunch of people who do serve, and, you know, I don't go around really bursting their bubble to them or their families' faces. But like, if you're in Iran right now in the Middle East, you're not protecting America. Like there shouldn't be a single soul that actually believes you're over there protecting America. They have no ability to touch us. The only countries that have missile capabilities to actually hit the US that are considered like enemy nations and not like direct ally nations would be like North Korea, China, and Russia. And even still, they're only really hitting West Coast targets. Still America, yes, but like they're not going to be able to necessarily light up the entire United States and paint the entire map with nukes. That's not the capability that they have. So if you think Iran can even touch even halfway to here, you're out of your mind. First of all, can they hit ally states and draw us into war? Yeah, absolutely. But like Iran having a nuclear capability, and again, despite the fact that we wiped it out back in June, and anyone who said otherwise was simply peddling fake news. That's a real White House press release. Like that's the full like title. It literally said, "We have wiped out Iran's like nuclear capabilities," and anyone who says otherwise, like it's fake news or whatever, real boomer headline. They literally put that out. And then even you can go back to the 90s when Netanyahu was running around basically saying that they're like this close to having a nuke. They're this close to having the nuke. That's their, you know, there's WMDs in Iraq moment that they've been peddling since the 90s, and it works every fucking time.
Only the United States can lead this vital international effort to stop the nuclearization of terrorist states. But the deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. And Iran, by the way, is also outpacing Iraq in the development of ballistic missile systems.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks.
Enrich uranium for a nuclear bomb in short order, in a few weeks or a few months. They could do that unless that's changed.
With this massive capacity, Iran could make the fuel for an entire nuclear arsenal, and this in a matter of weeks.
So you're not over there protecting America. You're not over there keeping us safe. You're just destabilizing the world more, making other nations really skeptical or just hate us even more, and then wanting them to come over and then terrorize us. Just leave them alone. Like, I don't give a shit about Lockheed Martin's stock price. I don't give a shit about any kickbacks you're receiving. I don't give a shit about stability in the region. I don't give a shit about spreading democracy in the region. I don't give a shit. Now, like, could you even, like, there's the only argument that, and I don't even stand on it, I don't even like it. The only argument is like, well, we destabilize the region. Shouldn't we like try to like restabilize it? I think that was so long ago. Any hope of bringing it back to what it was pre-revolution, I don't think it's possible. I think it's sort of like making a mistake in a game and you can't go back and change it. And now you have to live with that choice for the rest of the playthrough. Like, you fuck that up. Like, that is, you've scarred that region forever. And as it was already a region just marred with conflict and just historical and religious context, just constantly creating tension and just sort of a bloodline of violence over there. So us getting involved only amplified that 10x. You're not going to sort of erase the sins of the past there. I think you need to just leave it alone. You did what you did. And if someone else goes in, that's their issue. You know, there could be something said of like stopping foreign, you know, overstep in there if it gets like nasty enough, maybe. But again, I don't even stand on that because it doesn't help us here. I sure as shit don't want my tax dollars going to it. Start filling some fucking potholes here, or else we're going to start filling something else. What I would say if someone came to me in power and was like, hey, you need to go vote if we're going to get like involved in Iran or not. Or if they told me, yeah, we're going to get involved in Iran, but no, start, you know, warming up the black tar, baby, because it's either going in a pothole or it's going all over you. Like, everyone's sicker. It's harder to afford health care. It's harder to buy groceries. It's harder to put a roof over your head. And I know I've said this over and over again. So why our government is even pretending that bombing Iran is on the table, is a positive maneuver, is a good thing in any way. And oh yeah, that doesn't even address the fact that we're doing it now as sort of the temperature keeps rising on this Epstein file nonsense. Well, not nonsense. How the government's sort of going about its release and addressing it is nonsense. But every other country around the world seems to be taking action on it and at least launching investigations into people and arresting people who were listed within the files and incriminated in some way. From even the Sultan of whatever it is in Dubai, who's like the port guy, who's probably one of the most powerful people on there, to some fake British royalty dude, even though he wasn't really arrested for or investigated and arrested for crimes in the Epstein files. It was like a slap on the wrist. Like, they made it look like he was getting arrested for that, but really it was for some like trade violation or something. So they're not off the hook yet either. And then even some Swedish or Denmark company arrested some royal adjacent dude as well. But everyone but America seems to be investigating and arresting people. The most I've seen here is some people in high positions in companies. Like, there's a Goldman Sachs lawyer, and I've heard some things about some JP Morgan and Disney execs stepping down, but no one getting arrested. No one being investigated. If you're not filling the potholes, you better be filling pedophiles' heads with lead. There's no reason why you are now stepping outside of the country to get involved in other people's shit when they have made things as bad as they are here. That is the one argument I get into with people who are like, well, this is what you get. You voted for red. You should have voted blue. Listen, it wouldn't have been any fucking different. I can go through all the campaign promises, right? Everything you're getting now, this is on Kamala Harris's bucket list, right? We're continuing the wars. We're going through, there's no promise to fix the economy or make anything any better. The Epstein files weren't even on her campaign promise list. There was no interest in seeking justice or any sort of transparency. And that's everything you're getting now is exactly what Kamala Harris would have wanted. So it wouldn't have made a difference. But even zooming way far out, there hasn't been a single president who's come along and reversed the trend, red or blue. It doesn't matter. The trend of people being less happy, less safe, and less healthy. Wait, less happy, healthy, and safe. Yep, okay, didn't repeat one there. Has only ever continued. No one's ever really reversed that. There's no incentive for any of them to reverse that. So stop parroting about red versus blue, right? Like, let's talk about like how are we actually going to sort of turn things around for the people who are sort of left to fend for themselves. We have no recourse. We have no real protection. We have some piece of paper, but we know how this piece of paper just gets tossed to the wayside whenever it comes to just sort of conveniencing the political class. They can break laws, they can break acts of Congress, they could ignore all the rules, they don't have to pay taxes. They literally can make the rules and decide not to follow them. And you're going to pretend that piece of paper is going to protect you, and they want to fuck you year after year after year. It does not hold them accountable for anything. So I'm done talking about the political solution. One does not exist for this. There is no incentive for them to change the way that they have been acting via any political solution. Not an option. You're just going to get more wars in Iran, and they're just going to keep getting away with whatever the hell they're getting away with. Taxes, kid stuff. I see no greater shame than working for the government and supporting the government. I think those two things, we really need to start shaming people more for that, just to start swinging the dial, changing, the temperature, even if it's just incrementally and marginally year after year. Speaking of working for the government and wanting so desperately to be a part of the political class, we can remember, or if you can't, let's think back to Trump's inauguration, when all of the big tech CEOs were standing there. You had Zuck, obviously Elon, Bezos, all of the AI guys, the Google guy, all were there, front row, his inauguration. And mind you, during his last administration, all of these guys were his sworn enemies. Maybe besides Musk, but he doesn't count, fucking dork. And no one really stopped to wonder why. And I remember going, these are literally politicians. These are not businessmen. These people could not exist. They could not have amassed the wealth that they had without favoritism shown by the state, without paying and doing kickbacks towards the state to be able to skirt around laws and taxes and whatnot. These assholes could not possibly amass the wealth that they had. Period. And now we see it. We saw it with Trump's sort of deranged tweet about Anthropic being some woke company and how they'll never work with the Department of War or the Pentagon or whatever, simply because Anthropic wouldn't turn off, allegedly, they wouldn't turn off a lot of these safeguards on its AI. They wouldn't let AI kill, surveil people in mass, et cetera, et cetera. And within a day, that fucking slimeball wizard, Sam Altman, the OpenAI douchefuck, sweeps in to say, we'll kill people for you, we'll surveil the citizens of the United States for you, and kicked Anthropic to the sidelines and got the deal with the Pentagon. Now, bully this asshole, because again, we want to work for the state. The largest employer in the world. There is no glory in getting a government contract. There is nothing to be prideful of when you say you work for the state. It's a charity. You are literally paying your employer through taxes. That is just your tax dollars coming back to you, and if not other people's tax dollars that were stolen from them in your salary. It's a shameful gig, no matter at what level you work for the state. I think that's just how I view it. So this asshole scoops the deal, and all of the open AI and the AI sympathizers and the people who love the shitty fucking videos and who need AI to tell them everything with their life probably rejoice because, yay, more AI, despite the fact that a laptop is more expensive to buy. No, 2 sticks of RAM is more expensive than like most guns now. Like, good starter rifles are less expensive than 2 sticks of RAM now because of this AI horse shit. But even more alarming is the fact that every time AI is used in a war game to sort of play out a scenario, it reaches for the nuclear option without fail, like an alarming number of times. I haven't really read into the article too much. I started doing a brief read last night before I got a little too sauced during after brunch. I know I brought like the headline up, and this was something that I discussed with the people who went to Kamala's book tour, who I figured would be sort of cool with AI, because most of them are sort of like an educated bunch. They're sort of achieving like PhDs and whatnot. A lot of them actually used or sort of trained with and trained AIs in some of their research. I was expecting some AI sympathizers in the group. But when it came to this, all of them were like, fuck no. Like, it wasn't a red or blue thing. It was like what the fuck are we even doing playing around with this thing in the Department of War and the Pentagon when it seems to show a complete inability to stay away from a nuclear option? So here you are. In last election and on, I remember have said it time and time again. These people couldn't run a McDonald's at any fucking level of government. These people do not have a resume, a job history, any indication that they have any sort of competence to run even a small company. And yet we have put them in charge of the greatest country and the greatest superpower the world has ever known. And oh, by the way, that entire superpower became a superpower by murdering its last rulers. That is your heritage. That is your bloodline if you are an American citizen. And we have put them in power, and we are going to let them essentially just run. They have been running it into the ground at every single turn and have just been bleeding it for their own bottom dollar, their own profit. They've only used it, and they've only raped this country and its people and its resources and everything that makes it great to make them more wealthy. And we have suffered the consequences at every single turn. We have received some benefits through, technological advances in industry, but with all of that came serious negatives as well, only because we have the worst qualified people in the most powerful positions making terrible decisions for this great country. And again, if you love this country, you hate your government because it is becoming increasingly more and more clear that this government has only been destroying this country and just rotting it from the inside out. And so whether it's destroying the beautiful land to build windowless mega centers to cool and run useless AI, whether that AI is made to create Hitler fighting George Floyd in the Octagon videos, or whether it's deciding whether to nuke a small country, you have your government to thank for that. It's not the filthy liberals. It's not the maggots with the red hats. It's all of you who supported this, who asked for this. And you can say, I didn't vote for this. I didn't vote for this, brother. You have 200 years of historical precedent to show you that, yes, you fucking did. You couldn't take off, there's such a light film over your eyes. You couldn't remove that and maybe dissolve your ego just a little bit to see that your need to see red or blue up there only powered the whole thing and only empowered the whole machine to do what it did and get it to where it is today and where it will be tomorrow. And until we all just go, we don't fucking need it at all. Because again, roads, hospitals, infrastructure, all that existed long before governments existed. This wasn't a gift that the benevolent gods of the state just passed down onto us. The government cannot create everything. It needs to rely on or steal from private industry in order to say, look what we made, but really is look what we stole or look what we reallocated to make it appear that we made it. So if you want to avoid having an AI that's not afraid to push the nuclear button, it's time to really start looking away from political solutions is where I'm going to really leave that. All right, let's talk about some non-doom and gloom and some fun stuff. Cigar review. Let's do a cigar and like a bourbon review. Some things I've tried lately. It's been a while since I've been. The end of the winter here has been a little brutal on the cigar front for me. But last night I was able to try a 21-year aged Gurkha stick, which was. I would give it a. This is the very first one I had out of the pack. I'm not going to rate it like out of 10 yet, only because I feel like I may have gotten a meh one, so it could have been a fluke. It didn't draw very well, at all through the stick, and that sort of led to some issues with keeping it lit. Flavor-wise, it was spectacular, though. A little bit lighter wrapper. I'm not sure what the actual, I want to say it's definitely Nicaraguan or Ecuadorian. But I'll pull up the specs for it and paste it for the video portion. Very well balanced stick, bold flavor. If it only drew better and stayed lit, it would have been I would have rated it very highly. But I'm gonna give maybe one or two more chances to see if that one was a fluke. Maybe they are just rolled a little tightly. But a great stick. I remember getting those for a steal a while ago, and they've been chilling in the humidor for a minute now. I also have someone gifted me a bottle of Bibb and Tucker. I believe it's called the Six. Great bourbon, 94 proof, which is sort of an odd proof. Usually you're at 90 or over 100. 94 is sort of in an odd little pocket there. But a great bourbon to pair with a cigar. It's sweet. It's got a little spice to it. That 94 proof makes it, easy to just sort of sip on neat. Doesn't have a lot of bite to it. And it's a pretty affordable bottle too, if I remember when I looked it up. And not one that I've ever really seen before. I know a buddy brought it from Ohio for me for my birthday a while back, and I've been sort of working through it. But I paired that with the cigar last night. Only had positive things to say. One bottle I'm not too pleased with is, make sure I got it right here. Yes, the 1792 full proof. So I remember when I first saw 1792 hit the shelves, bought it. It was just a normal sort of bottle. I believe it was like an 80 proof. It was a little lower, I remember. And because I picked up on that immediately because it was so easy just to put down. And it was kind of thin. It didn't carry a lot of, flavor with it. And so I never really revisited the 1792 lineup until I was walking through, maybe it was like a Kroger. I can't remember where I was, but I remember the full proof caught my eye. It's up there. It's like in the 120s, I want to say. And I said, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. The complete opposite side of the coin as the regular one. Too much burn, too much hurt going down. It's not very refined in that you're going to feel it going all the way down. You're going to be breathing a little bit of fire as you sip it, in my opinion. And that sort of destroys a lot of the flavor you try to derive from it. I kind of put it down after I opened it the first day and haven't really revisited it. Only because I have some Bookers, and then I have the Elijah Craig. I want to say it's like a 9-year like single barrel proof. Maybe it's the Private Select. I'll put a picture of it up. But that's like over 128. It's like 128 and a half proof. And that shit goes down like a 90 proof bourbon. It is so flavorful. It's so refined. I mean, you can tell it's boozy when it goes down, but it doesn't bite at all. It's so impressive what Elijah Craig did with that bottle. And it's like, $75, $80 bottle, I want to say. But for like a Booker's, you're going to pay over 100, or other, really nice bottles. Not many can really hold the light to it when we're talking about, refinement and flavor in, the really high proof range. So everything is sort of judged against that standard. And 1792 full proof doesn't really stand up to it in my opinion, but that's just my palate. That's the nice thing about cigars and bourbon. Two people can try the same thing and see and taste very different things. So that's just my take on it. Feel free to try it and tell me if I'm an asshole and got it completely wrong. For cigars, I picked up some Room 101 Doomsayers, the Ave Maria Dark Knight, and the New World Decennial. Those are some 3 really highly rated, heavy hitting cigars. And I got really excited on the really warm weather days. I was like, cigar days are back. I'm going to be on a boat. I'm going to be near a lake. I'm going to be by a fire pit. And we're going to be smoking cigars real soon here every night. And then we got snowed on the same day. But very, very excited to be back out under the beautiful, shining, burning star in the sky, getting some color, getting some natural vitamin D, and partaking in vices with some good people very soon here. February felt like it lasted for 6 weeks. I don't know why, but we're getting some glimpses of warm weather, hoping to get back out on the bike. That being said, I do need to completely disassemble the top end of the engine and regasket the entire thing, because Harley be doing Harley things and we're leaking out of the rocker box. So we're just going to completely reseal the whole thing. It doesn't look like it's too bad, just sort of tedious. Gas tank's got to come off, and then got a bunch of little nuts and bolts and little engine pieces to sort of keep track of as you reseal. So once it's warm enough to really spend a weekend out in the garage doing that, I'll get on that and knock it out before the summer. As it gets warmer as well, we're going to stay on the long range shooting goal as well, especially with my commitment to buying a house this month now that we're in March. And April would be cutting a little late. I think my lease is up in May. So the goal is to basically have a seamless transition into the house as I make my last payment on my rental here. That way I'm not double paying for either at one time. So as I'm doing that, I'm getting really hardcore in my savings. I want to keep as much cash as possible in case anything stupid happens, in case I may need to make a better initial offer, or in case I move into a house and something breaks, I got to replace it. So I had 2 gym memberships. One's to like a mixed martial arts gym. One was to just another gym. I canceled one of the memberships that wasn't the mixed martial arts gym that I don't go to as much. That cuts $70 a month into the savings. Also making it very clear I'm not going out more than once a week to eat and or drink, just because I don't need to. But I get, you gotta take care of your relationship. You gotta, hang out with friends. You gotta do that sort of thing. But I'm really clutching the purse strings here. I'm really tightening it up, making sure that things that are going towards paying down the credit card bill monthly are very, very low, so that the amount of cash I can hold in my pocket is maximized. That being said, I've already made the investment in the 308. I've already made the investment in ammo. I have everything needed to shoot. Now I just need to go out and shoot, zero it, become familiar with the rifle and conditions, and mathing out holds and dope and all that stuff. So as things heat up, that is still very much a goal of mine. I can justify buying some range time for that. But that's really mostly it. I bought like a radio pouch, a new one, just 'cause I didn't like the one that was on my rig. It is like an airsoft-ish sort of one. It doesn't offer a ton of protection. It's also sort of bulky on the left side. That's the non-pistol side of my rig. So I just wanted to buy one that sort of hugs a little closer to the chest. Also one that is multicam, because I know I have some Ranger Green things on the multicam kit, but it is looking a little blotchy now. So got one that was multicam just to sort of keep the aesthetic and the vibe a little more cohesive. But that was only like $20 again on tax swap. But not much more investment in kit. Again, I've been selling things, some scopes, some optics. I have the Zenit Co. Pursed One, an actual genuine Pursed One, listed for sale as well. That's the IR only laser, full power. So if you know any AK autists that would love a Zenny Pursed One, let me know. Don't have a switch for it. There are no switches in existence for it anyways. That being said, if you run it on your support hand side, like off 90 degrees to the hand guard, you can operate the button on it pretty easily. So let me know if you know someone who would like that, and I'll send them to the post, and I'll ship it to them for free if they want to pay for it. Just because I've held on to these things in my parts bin in my safe for a very long time, and none of them ever saw the light of day. None of them ever made it onto builds. So we are amassing as much wealth as possible, because again, I need every little bit of it, since I'm playing in a bit of a high worth area when it comes to houses. Doing that just because it's closer to the 9 to 5, it's close to my family, it's kind of close to sort of everything. And the goal of actually owning, even though you pay taxes forever, so it's not technically owning, but this is as close as you can get to owning anything, is a very real goal of mine. So this is my boulder, and off I push it, and I'm continuing to just position myself so that when the right house comes along and I do place an offer and does get accepted, it's a very comfortable transition, and I'm not really struggling to make it work. And then this is an interesting thing I've been kicking around a lot lately. Up until this really past year, and towards the end of last year maybe, I never saw myself as someone who was like, yeah, I'm dying to be a parent. Like, I need to find a lady, I need to get married, I need to have kids and start a family ASAP. And I'm not like there, right? But I was very averse to the thought of actually like having kids. I didn't like the thought for a long time. Struggling financially obviously doesn't make that a real possibility anyways, which is one reason. and I didn't really love the direction the world was taking. I didn't think that bringing a kid into a world with so much uncertainty and so much sort of like danger was a wise thing to do. And I'm still not even sure that it is, to be honest with you. And that financial concern is still very much there. But I have found myself like want to have, like a family, if you know what I mean. And I know this is very not coded of the show as of late. We're not really ranting about the state and whatnot, but this has to deal with being a good person. This has to deal with building a community. This has to do with living a fulfilling life, I do believe. And listen, if you've made the decision not to have kids, then you can completely ignore this, because that's a very responsible decision to make. Like, you don't have to have like anyone. This isn't, this is again a very gray thing. No one should be telling you you have to have kids. No one should be telling you you shouldn't have kids, right? Like, this isn't an always and never thing. Everyone's different. Everyone makes the decision that's best for them, and that's how you go about your life, basically. So very much like religion, I don't love the people who tell you what you should be doing definitively, as if like there's one size fits all answer to the universe and to life, because there's not. This was just like a little transformation in my own mind that sort of took place over the past year. But I found myself wanting to like, have a family, simply because when I looked back, and I remember reading and listening to some people, and the thing that really kicked it off was someone, I forget who it was talking about, the declining birth rate, about how fewer people are dating, engaging in relationships, having children, and whatnot. And one individual on this panel was talking like, do you realize how badly you need to screw up an animal, like particularly a mammal, for it to completely disregard its like evolutionary drive? Like, for a mammal to not want to reproduce, to not have kids, just from an evolutionary perspective, do you realize how badly you need to fuck up that animal to sort of flip that switch and change that behavior pattern? That's a little bit deep, right? Like, fuck, because like we know that technology has not been great for that aspect of like creating a family, and especially what we've seen technology's impact on kids are. And then obviously everything else going on in the world, of things being less healthy and less safe, people being less happy. There's a lot to be said that, not an unwise decision to say, I'm not going to bring a kid into that, or I really don't want to bring a kid into that, or this has fucked me up so badly, I still need to feel like I'm getting mine, because I've been screwed out of X, Y, and Z because of how shitty this world is. I'm just going to live for number one and keep out for myself, which, if that's your feeling, more power to you. Go right ahead. So that was one thing that sort of shifted my thought process and my mindset a little bit. And I said, damn, that's pretty good. It's a pretty valid point. And then I started looking back, and some of my fondest memories, and again, I've said this not really as a joke, it was semi-serious. That first 1 or 2 summers of COVID were unironically some of my favorite summers, like, of all time, because I got to work from home, which basically was I got to read outside at every second I had, between meetings during work. I happened to live in an apartment with a pool, so I got to sit out and around and by a pool with other people, reading and drinking and just hanging out and socializing and having an awesome time for an entire summer, 2 summers actually. That was incredible. That was amazing. And on top of that, I became a little more radicalized and started investing more in training and kit and whatnot. And we'd go out shooting and all this stuff. Like, those first like 2 summers of COVID were absolutely electric. But every Sunday, I would traverse back from my apartment to my parents' place with my brothers, and we would sit outside. We'd go on the boat. We'd smoke cigars. We'd talk about just life, what's going on in the world. We wouldn't necessarily agree on, things on political view wise and whatnot, obviously, with me being an extreme retard. We'd have great homemade like family dinners, and just spending a whole day, a whole afternoon, even if it's just a whole evening together in a setting like that. Those are some of my most like peaceful memories. Like, in those moments, it was just pure, just peace. There was nothing happening in the world. There was nothing going on but just enjoying conversation, enjoying a cigar, enjoying good food. And that's actually why I started this whole thing. Like if you read the About Me section, I think on the website, it goes into like why like I started Full Metal Humidors, because it was moments like that where it's like, fuck, this is so good. I love nothing more in the world than this. Like it doesn't get any better than this. And I was like, fuck, that'd be really cool to do with like my own wife and like my own kid or two kids or whatever, I think. And listen, I'm not like ready for that now. It wouldn't be financially responsible for me to do that at this very second. No, but like, and luckily I am a guy, so like I don't have a huge, like I don't really have a biological clock to race against, but like obviously keeping a partner in mind, we're like, is a very real concern. So like being a team, I do have a biological clock to sort of race against, but we're not at like a dangerous like stage in that yet. So that's not stressing me out by any means. I'm not going to race into it. But the thought of doing that for like, to build that and to sort of share that same just sense of like security and peace and happiness and just joy and like being able to provide that like bubble, that good, amazing life, regardless of how fucking crazy it is in the world, seems like a really neat and cool thing, right? And I'm aware that the decision to start a family is an inherently selfish decision. I'm fully aware of that, and so that is something I come to terms with as well, and understanding like, is it a fair thing to do? And maybe that's even too deep. I also kind of slap myself in the face and I go, dude, what are you doing overthinking this? Sometimes it's not that deep, but I do want to make sure that the decision is paid enough attention, and that while I try not to overthink it, I do give it the proper amount of attention, thinking, and planning before making that leap. And you're never going to get something 100% before you make somewhat of a leap. But obviously, doing things responsibly means that I've done the research, I've done the thinking, I've planned ahead as much as possible. And, whatever goes awry, we just figure it out from there. But I'm in a good enough position to figure it out. So that being said, that's a little bit of a deep conversation, a little more than I feel like I've ever shared personally. But that was my sort of journey, and, the thought of like having kids and whatnot. And this completely ignores the fact that it is almost impossible to date right now. So again, Godspeed to all of you out there in the trenches, regardless of your stance on kids and starting a family. I wish you all the best of luck in finding a well-suited partner, because I hear the horror stories weekly from some of my boys. Got together with an old roommate of mine from college last night, and I hear it all. And my God, am I not jealous of the situation he's in? He does a lot to himself, but again, I know things are not a pretty picture, if you will, out there in the dating world. And obviously, we've gone over the statistics and the visuals of how far off people are on beliefs now, especially males and females. I think that divide has only continued to just exponentially grow apart over time. But if everything moves, time's a circle, right? It's a great big circle, or even like a pendulum, right? When the pendulum swings one way, it swings back the other. And there's a time sort of in between where it's not favoring one particular extreme. So hang in there. Everything comes back around, and you'll get, what's coming to you if you put in the time in and you're focusing on yourself and you're doing things right. Because otherwise, if you just force something and make it work, and you're with somebody who's really not like a well-suited match, not someone who, you really should be with, oh boy, everyone knows an unhappy couple where the girl or the dude's they're both just nitpicking each other. You could tell they just hate each other, but they're just there for convenience, or they're afraid of like resetting and, going back to, where they were before. I would much rather be single than stuck in that sort of hateful just spiral, right? Because that same peace and happiness and sense of security I have, or had with my family back during COVID, when we were just together, just doing things as like a unit, just being happy and focused on just being happy with each other. You should feel that exact same sense with your partner and your family every single day. And obviously that's optimal every single day, right? You're going to have ups and downs. It's going to be bad days. Don't pack your bags and hit the road whenever you hit a bump, right? Work through it. But you should feel that exact same thing with your family, with your partner. So don't force it for nothing. And that was a little more sappy than I really wanted it to get, but don't really know what else I'm supposed to talk about on a false spring, snowy morning here in the state of Michigan. But with that, I think we'll call it. We touched on a lot today, but I feel like we all learned and grew a little bit. As always, this is your weekly reminder to check out the site. The GPWs, the general purpose windbreakers, are live. They are going to be permanent fixtures on the site, and they are made to order. Current turn time is like 2 to 3 weeks. Shorts are there, same turn times, shiesties, and as always, the full metal humidors, like we just discussed, are always there. And with the warm weather coming back, maybe time to place your order now, because they are also made to order. I make them right here in my garage. So I do that only to keep the wood in good condition. And every humidor, every ammo can, depending on its use, is beat a little differently. So like I can't cut like universal wood dimensions for each. So I keep the wood like sealed and stored so it doesn't like absorb moisture or get dirty or warp or anyway. So every time someone places one, I end up pulling the wood out, measure it, cut it to the humidor, and then get it installed inside overnight. And then I season it as well before it's shipped out. So those are also made to order, give that like a 2 or 3 day lead time as well to make. So get the jump on that now if you're interested in storing your cigars and bringing them on boats and other nice trips during the summer, the warm months. But as always, stay metal, and thank you for listening.